We've seen your synopsis, and thank you so much, because that's really helpful for our students to have a bit of a sense of what's happened and gone on for you in your own words as well.
Yeah.
And so we want to sort of now start elaborating on that synopsis and asking you some questions about the counselling process and how you've experienced counselling, and then some of your ideas around all of that. So,
Sure.
Firstly, could you briefly describe the circumstances that led you to seek the services of a counsellor?
So I had my niece. I don't have children, but I have nieces and nephews that I'm very, very close to, that I sort of almost consider them my children.
Yeah.
My niece had been living in northern New South Wales in a really isolated sort of town with not many job opportunities. And she was also experiencing, unbeknownst to me at the time, some mental health issues of her own.
Right.
So I really wanted to sort of reach out and support her. Me living in a city, I asked her to come and live with me. She lived with me for 3 years prior to me seeking counselling. And during those 3 years, she went through a really long-term unemployment, to finally getting a job, to then sort of me getting a job in the same place where she worked. So we were living together. We were sharing a house together, we were socialising together, and things for me started getting out of control in that I didn't feel like I had any sense of who I was anymore. And sort of friends had sort of pointed out to me that I was changed, and suggested maybe that I'd seek counselling. And it was not something that I thought of doing, because I thought I was very in control of everything. I always like to think I'm in control of things, and it was a very big sort of decision for me to see that my life had become out of control, and I needed help to get it back. That's sort of the short and curly of why I started, started counselling.
And for you, Diane, what has it been like to experience issues with relationships?
Very difficult. Very difficult. You think, particularly when it comes to family, that the relationship should be very easy. It wasn't, and it, like as I mentioned, I don't have children, so I didn't know how to properly be a parent figure, and I didn't know whether I needed to be a parent figure or whether I needed to be an auntie figure, because I was always the fun auntie. I'd come home on holidays, and it was very difficult for me to know. It was about sort of control too for me. It was like I wanted her to do these things my way, and so I had to learn that she had her life and she had the right to do things her way. And knowing that I wanted to support her, so difficult is probably the long the long answer to that. Sorry, I've taken notes just in case I'd forgotten something.
Very impressed that you've taken notes.
There was a feeling of being responsible. I think sort of when I opened up to having her move to Melbourne and me support her, and there was a long-term sort of time that she was unemployed. She was unemployed for about 12 months. So I supported her financially, I supported her emotionally during that time. So it was the feeling of responsibility. I felt it overwhelming because I didn't know that what I was doing was good enough, or whether I was helping her, whether I was hindering her. I felt a lot of frustration. And mostly a lot of that frustration fell on my sister, because I felt that she should have picked up and helped her more. So anger, There was a lot of anger towards my sister as well. I love my sister, but I felt that she could have done more to help her, and I thought, well, why haven't you done this? So, yeah.
Can I clarify? Yeah, no, absolutely, Diane. That's a really comprehensive answer to that question. Could I just clarify how old your niece was and how old you were when you were in this space?
So she was 20 when she came, and I was 39. 39.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And we've never lived in her entire childhood. We've never lived in the same town. I've always lived somewhere else, and only ever sort of had contact during holidays and things like that. Holidays where I've gone home, or my sister and the kids have come to visit me and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There was a period of 12 months where I did live at home. Yeah, so there was a 12-month period in those 20 years of hers that I did spend. That's right. I tried to see change. Didn't work. I hated it.
So can we turn your attention now to the counsellor? And what were your impressions of the counsellor when you first began the counselling process?
Look, my first impression was when I walked in, she was adorable. She was this little tiny, feisty, vibrant sort of woman. And I felt instantly okay in her presence. I felt safe in her presence. She exuded kind of authority. Even though she was tiny, she was just this tiny little. She is this tiny little woman, but I felt safe. She made me feel safe. She was older, and I think that's what I was kind of looking for at that stage. I think she was the right fit for me. She was recommended to me from friends who had been to her, who said, I think she can help. And she was the right fit. So she was little and kind and motherly, but even though I say all those things, she was feisty. She wouldn't let me get away with things. If I tried to fob her off, she would
challenge you.
Yeah, she'd call me on it, and particularly in places where I wasn't feeling like I wanted to go, but safely. She was feisty, so she could hold her own, and I guess they were my first impressions, that she was just this lovely little, tiny, loving person. Yep. And I think that's kind of what I needed. If I look in hindsight, I don't know. And I particularly only went to her because she was a woman. I didn't want to see a man. I didn't think that I would be able to open up. Yep. Okay. So, I was pleased that she was a woman, and I was pleased that she was older.
Thank you. How long did you see her for, and do you still currently see her?
I don't at the moment. I did stop seeing her. I felt we had travelled through all the paths that we needed to travel, that I could with her anyway. And I saw her for up to 3 years, almost 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And with the actual process of counselling itself, Diane, what aspects of that process did you find helpful?
Look, it was all helpful. I didn't find it unhelpful in any way. I think the ability to sit and talk openly with someone was the thing that I liked the most. I guess because a lot of the way I work through things is through talking and talking it out, and sometimes just the mere process of starting from A and going through and just being asked clarifying questions to get to the end are sometimes some of the best therapy sessions we had. Was just not it was just talking about it and getting it out and actually hearing myself say it, I think was some of the most helpful parts of the therapy. Look, we did lots of, I can't even sort of think of the terminology, but
No, that's okay.
she sort of, if I was telling her about something and I, had a reaction to something, she would say, well, this is why you did that. This is, this is what humans do, and that was helpful. That was kind of helpful to be able to go, so I reacted because of this, and that helped me.
So is it she sort of gave you a sense of understanding behind the behaviour or the emotion you were feeling?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't tell you how helpful that was, because just knowing, other people have that reaction too, and it's not abnormal, and it's kind of okay, and there's a reason why we did that, and then to be able to explore those reasons and actually put things into context, and that's still helpful now, because sometimes when I have a reaction to someone about something that's happened and it's not a normal type of reaction, like, I go, okay, that's because of that.
Yeah.
And that's, that helps me change my behaviour.
Yeah. So the strategies and the aspects of things that you learnt in the counselling process, you're still applying today in your life today.
Yeah, even though I don't do it consciously, it's sort of, I'll find myself just picking myself up and just going, you used to do that. Maybe you shouldn't do that anymore. But she used to also get me to photo board, sort of cut pictures out and put them on a board if we were trying to explore something. And I know sort of when, particularly around giving up smoking, sort of after about a year of working with her, I sort of decided, I'm going to give up smoking. And it was just like a passing comment. And then she helped me with it. And it was like, okay, I didn't know counsellors could help. I thought that was not part of the therapy journey.
Right, yeah.
But it was really helpful because we photo board, I don't know what the terminology is, but I cut out pictures and, sort of we worked on images, and I think sort of those images helped me see why I smoked. And then we worked on images after I gave up smoking, and I thought it was really interesting because if I can tell you, the images that I chose to put on the board before I gave up smoking were all around this glamour. So it was smoking and it was glamorous and there was models and, everything was great. And then after I'd given up smoking, the images I started choosing then, sort of quite unconsciously, were things around death and dying and pollution and things like that. And it was just that kind of stuff helps cement things in my brain. She talked about neural pathways and how, sort of part of the giving up smoking journey was, every time I walked into work, I'd stop and have a cigarette in one particular place. And so she walked me through, okay, well, if you don't walk in that way, if you walk in a different door and you don't smoke. So, and I think a lot of that stuff really helped. And I still try and tell people about that now. It's like, just do this, it works.
They're great examples. Thank you so much for sharing them. That's really interesting.
And practice. So practicing sort of around, sort of particularly with my niece, we had to have some difficult conversations. And I didn't know how to start those conversations. I come from a family where we don't talk to each other. We don't tell each other how we feel. Everything's great. So I had to start having some difficult conversations with her, and I didn't know how to do that, so we practiced. I wrote it down, we practiced, we talked to each other, and they're the things that helped in counselling.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Diane. Were there aspects of the counselling process that you didn't find helpful?
I can't think. I'm sorry, I'm just going to
No,
notes.
please do.
And I don't think I could find even sort of, I don't think there was any that I didn't find helpful.
I'm sure your therapist would be really happy to hear that.
I really struggled, and I took notes, and I sort of even wrote, no, I can't think of anything
Yeah.
that I didn't find helpful. Because Irene also, even though I said before she pushed me on some things, she never pushed me where I didn't want to go. If I didn't want to go and I didn't want to explore something, she never pushed. So
So can I just ask then and clarify a little bit, because earlier on you were saying that there was a feistiness there and there were
Yeah.
times where she would challenge you. But if there was a moment where she challenged you and you felt not ready, then that would be a time where she'd not keep pushing. Is that
yeah,
right?
well, if I can clarify, if I think of a sort of situation, because I was talking to her about a colleague at work that I was sort of having trouble with, and I was very opinionated about what I thought was going on, and she called me on it and said, no, you're wrong. And I got quite angry because I went, no, you're not, I'm right, you're not right. And it was around sort of what I thought about this person and how they were sort of treating me, and what I thought I was on my high horse about something, and she called me on it, and it took me actually until the next session and a week, or the 10 days to the next session to go. Actually, no, it wasn't 10 days, it was like 2 weeks, for me to come back and say, you know what, you were actually right, I was wrong. Yeah, so it was more sort of when she pushed me, she would call me on when I thought I was wrong.
And that's
because I'm also
really-
the kind of person who thinks I know everything. So, and so, it was difficult for me sometimes to be told that I wasn't always right.
Okay. And that's a really interesting aspect, I think, for our students to hear, because we discuss a lot about giving advice or telling clients what to do. So that, and you just spoke then about how initially you were angry about that.
Yeah.
But then you came to realise that by her sharing that with you, there was an accuracy there that
Yeah.
you aligned with.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing for
Yeah.
our students to hear, and it's an interesting aspect given what we talk about in regards to an effective and appropriate counselling process.
Yeah. So when I say feisty, it's more in the she wouldn't let me get away with the bullshit I was trying to feed her.
Okay.
And bullshit I was believing in myself and sort of thinking, that I'm always right about things.
And when she challenged you in that respect, did you feel she was doing it for your good?
Oh, yeah.
For the benefit of you?
She didn't raise her voice. She didn't get angry. It was just like she'd say, ever so gently in her nice, quiet voice, she'd say, Diane, would you perhaps have thought of this?
Okay, yeah. So the way that was
Do you
framed.
think the way I see it
Yeah.
is that maybe
Yeah.
she still left it up to me.
Okay, yeah.
She didn't sort of say, no, you're wrong.
Yeah. Okay, so it wasn't as black and white as that. Yeah, that
So,
was what I
yeah.
was interested in.
Yeah, so when I say
Yeah.
feisty, it wasn't she.
Yeah.
It's just that she was such a small package of this little tiny lady that I
Yeah.
just sort of, that she did stand up and
Okay.
she would, or she would sort of say, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
No, you've got a right to be angry about that.
Okay. So,
So
there was
she-
sort of a permission
Yeah.
giving aspect there.
Yeah.
You paint a really clear picture of her. I'm getting quite a sense
Okay.
of her as you're talking, which is really
Adorable.
interesting. So, Diane, overall as a client, what professional qualities of the counsellor were important to you? So things like trustworthiness, for example.
It was one of the most difficult decisions I've ever made in my life to go to counselling. Now,
No, that's okay. Please take your time.
it was a really, really hard. I
Yeah.
can't tell you how hard it was
Yeah.
for me to kind of admit that I couldn't fix things myself.
Yeah.
but also not wanting to unpeel anything. I had spent my life building up barriers and layering,
Yes.
you know, just layers and layers, and I was frightened that, like an onion, that, you know, that if I started to peel the layers of the onion away,
Yeah.
then I was going to be exposed.
Yes.
And I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I didn't know whether I would completely fall apart.
Yeah.
It was terrifying. It was really hard.
Yeah.
What was the question again?
No, that's okay. Do you need a minute? Do you
No.
need a tissue or some water or
I'm
anything?
fine.
Please
Yeah,
take your
it was
time.
just, it was hard. It
Yeah.
wasn't easy.
No,
And, you know, yeah.
absolutely.
So what,
So I was just asking, what professional qualities do you think a counsellor
so
needs to have from your perspective as a client?
So if professional quality is someone that you feel safe with, someone that you can tell your secrets to, because
Yeah.
you sometimes don't even tell your secrets to yourself, and to have them come out loud to somebody else is a really big thing.
Yes,
Huge.
absolutely.
And so you want to be safe, you want to feel like they don't judge you, because you're not going to say anything if you feel like you're judged. And someone who's supportive and professional, and I don't know, and just, yeah, safe. It's about safety. Safety was the biggest thing for me, and I think because she was this motherly figure, and I have a great relationship with my mother, so I feel safe with my mother. So the fact that she was that motherly figure helped.
Yeah,
I think if I'd have been to see someone younger, it wouldn't have worked. And like I said, you know, if it was male, it wouldn't have worked.
yeah,
So her age, her demeanour, her professional, you know, she was very... I could tell her anything and she never flinched. So that sort of made me feel okay, that it was like I never sort of felt like I was judged. So it's very important.
Thank you so much for that insight. That's really helpful for our students to hear.
Good.
Do you need a sip of water or anything?
I'll be fine. Thank you. Sorry for crying.
No, please don't ever apologise for crying.
I'm a crier.
We all do it.
One thing Irene always had was tissues.
It's a very important thing for all counsellors to have, I can assure you. Are you right to keep going?
Yeah, I'm good.
So, how have you benefited from the counselling process?
So many ways. So many ways, in that I treat myself better. I look after myself more. I put myself first. I never used to. I was always last. I feel like going through this process, I was able to help my niece more, because I stopped coming from the place of judgment. Because what it ended up being was, it wasn't really about her. The whole counselling process just unravelled all this other stuff. Hence, you know, I thought I'd go for 6 sessions, but sort of almost 3 years later, I just was really enjoying the process of getting to know me and understanding me, and I feel like I help my family more. I'm sure I've written some notes.
Go for it.
Yeah, you know, work particularly, sort of, you know, the fact that I really struggled at work. I was always stressed at work. And just by looking after myself and understanding me more helped me with work as well. Is that...
Absolutely. And how do you see your needs from counselling changing over time? And you already just stated then that you thought you'd be there for 6 sessions, and then 3 years later you're still, actively participating in the counselling process. So if you think about from the beginning of that journey to now, has there been a shift there? And if there has been, are you able to articulate what that is?
I think I'm sort of getting back. It's been a couple of years since I've not been sort of in therapy or seen a counsellor, and I needed to have a break. Like I really just, at the time, even though I found every session helpful, and sometimes we'd go and we wouldn't really talk about too much, I always still found it helpful, but I just sort of started to getting to the point where I thought I'm kind of sick of talking about myself. And I felt like I just needed to get out there in the world and start living. I haven't started to scratch away at some of the deeper stuff. It's still there, still under there, covered up.
Yep.
But one day I'd like to have a poke around and just see what happens.
Yep.
And I won't be as scared because, and I don't think Irene was the right person to help me further.
Okay.
I felt we had travelled through that journey enough, and I felt really guilty about that. I felt really bad, actually, when I had to call her to say, hey, I think it's over. It's kind of like ending a relationship with someone. It's like changing hairdresser or dentist and, your therapist. It was like I didn't want to sort of really say to her, I think it's, I think we've travelled our path together and I don't think you can help me anymore, because I don't think she could.
And I think that's a really interesting point that you raise in regards to the finishing of sessions. And how did Irene make that okay for you? And did she make that okay for you?
She kind of didn't.
Okay.
She sort of, she made me, she asked me sort of, around the time it was around the cost, so it was quite expensive.
Yes, so this was private counselling.
Very expensive, 90-minute sessions.
Oh, okay.
You know, sort of, so it was kind of a financial thing as well as kind of finishing the path. So she sort of nicely offered to cut the cost a little bit,
right,
and for me to keep coming, but that just actually kind of made it harder for me to then say no, it's okay,
because there were other factors, not just the cost factor.
And I know it from her, it was coming from a place of like, I know that we haven't finished everything. We know that there's some stuff there that needs to be scratched away and stuff. And I know it was coming from a place of care. Yeah. But it made it more difficult for me to say no.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Did spirituality or religion help in this process? Were there other sources of strength that you drew upon?
No. Look, I was raised a Catholic, but don't practice. I don't necessarily believe in anything one way or the other. I know Irene's Jewish, but religion didn't come into it at all, and that kind of was good for me.
Yep.
Because I didn't want it to come from a base of religion. I think that probably would have turned me off. So I guess sort of more spiritually, we were more sort of spiritual, and I was sort of free to sort of bring up some kooky beliefs. Yes. Without judgment.
Diane, what were some of the most challenging aspects for you of the counselling process, and were there times during that 3 years where you felt like discontinuing the therapy?
Yes, yes and no. I think the hardest thing, as I mentioned before, was getting through the door.
Right.
After that first session, when I walked out and I hadn't fallen apart, and a week later I was still okay, and in fact I was learning more about myself, I guess cost, you know, financial cost come into it all the time, because you always had to find, you know, that $200 to go, and you'd sort of think, ugh,
yes,
you know, really?
Yeah, it's a lot of money, and can be prohibitive for people. Yeah.
So if anything, once I walked through the door, I was in. But the cost of it.
And do you think things have changed since you first started seeing a counsellor?
Yeah, I do, because I'm quite open to people that, you know, it's like, hey, I've been in therapy, you know, and I'm okay with that. And I think when I first started going, I didn't tell anyone, you know, look, I had to take time off work to leave early, and, you know, it was very embarrassing for me to have that conversation with my boss to say, you know, look, I need to leave work every, you know, second Tuesday at 3 o'clock, so, you know, I could have lied and sort of said something, but I'm not good at that, so I just sort of went, I've got to go to therapy. You know, and at the time, I don't think there was an understanding there.
Right.
I think there was a lot of judgment there. It was like, oh, she's lost her mind.
Right.
But I think it's a bit better. I'm seeing it in the workplace where people are sort of able to...
So that sort of stigma around seeking
I think it's
support.
still there, but I think there's less, you know, and I hear more people sort of talk about sort of seeing counsellors and stuff like that, and I'm very encouraging of people. I'm, you know, always trying to encourage them to take that first step, because I know how scary it is. And I think that's very prohibitive for a lot of people, is that first step.
Yeah.
I know with a friend of mine who really needs to go to counselling, just won't, because she's terrified, like me, that if she says the words or go, you know, that she's just going to literally end up in a psycho funny farm.
Right.
Because if she starts, she'll fall apart. And that's not true. It's actually completely opposite. So
it's a really useful insight for us to have. Thank you. So we'd love to hear from a client perspective, Diane. What advice would you give our counselling students in training in regards to how they can provide the most professional and helpful service possible for their clients?
I think don't be judgmental. Don't even show that you judge them. Just be kind, listen, be empathetic. Not soppily though, because, you know, you don't want to be, oh, you poor thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's very hard to sort of, you don't want someone going, you know, like your friends would go, oh, you'll be all right, you know, just take
jolly you along a little bit.
You know, and you want them to be professional. Like you actually want to walk into a room and feel the confidence that they know what they're doing. Yeah. Because you don't. Yeah. You've got no idea. Okay. And you don't know how you're going to react, how you're going to fall apart. So you want absolute confidence that that person's going to be there no matter what happens.
Thank you so much. I think that's been incredibly insightful already, but I'd like to ask you if you wouldn't mind hearing and answering some questions from our students who are currently live online.
Sure.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you so much, Diane. So I'm just going to throw it over to Tristan. And Tristan, maybe if you'd like to share some of the questions from our students.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for telling us your story.
You're welcome.
So we've had a few questions from our trainee counsellors. Renata asks whether you had a session with your niece at all, and if so, if that was helpful or productive or not.
That's an excellent question. No, we didn't, because she was extremely resistant to seeking any counselling herself. So every time I raised it with her, she went into this angry, put up a brick wall, I can't deal with it, there's nothing wrong with me. You know, it took a very long time for me to get her to see a counsellor herself and have a session, which was enormously helpful for us. She's now moved back home and has been seeing a counsellor up there, and things have improved a lot. Yeah. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And Al Shwara asks whether not having the company of a significant other impacted you on any way, whether that made it more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
No,
I feel like
take your time.
sometimes I have to do everything, and I think that's why I'm such a strong person. Except I've had to be strong because I haven't had a partner for a while, and that sort of, you know, was part of the counselling sort of that came up in counselling because my previous partner had died, and so there were a lot of you know, yeah, it was more difficult because I was alone and I didn't feel like my family were far away. But I'm very, very lucky to have some very supportive friends who I leaned on quite heavily. So, yeah. Yes, very good question.
Sure, but it sounds like you an enormous sense of resilience there as well for yourself.
Yeah. I've I'm the strong person in the family. I'm the person who, you know, keeps us together. You know, when it is a crisis, I'm the one that, you know, even though I'm far away, I'm the one that flies in and fixes everything. And yeah, I've had to become, and I'm also really stubborn like my dad was, you know. Yeah, I'm very much like him. So yeah.
And Bree also asks, was there a moment when you realised that counselling was helping and it was effective, and how long into the counselling process was it before you realised that counselling was helpful?
After the first session, like honestly, it was quite life-changing, because like I said, I didn't fall apart. I walked out, tears, red eyes, you know, feeling like I'd been punched in the guts. Like I felt emotionally exhausted, and pretty much after every session, to some degree or not, I felt so exhausted, so tired. But it the next day I'd wake up and I'd go, I'd feel lighter. I felt happier. You know, the fact that the world didn't fall apart was a really good thing. And yeah, so straight away for me.
So sort of confronting all this really difficult stuff, and that was exhausting, but the next day the realisation that you're still there and it's okay is quite a lot of freedom from it.
And I know sort of in later years of therapy, like Irene give me homework to do, you know, so she'd give me some homework to practice on something, and I'd go back, and it was almost like I was, you know, a 5-year-old coming in with, you know, the drawing that I'd done in kindergarten, you know, to go, look what I did. And I was proud of myself, you know. So, you know, later on in therapy, when I started learning more about myself, you know, I'd eagerly say, oh, it's Irene this week, you know, I can show her what I've done.
Bree also asked how regular the sessions were.
So it was fortnightly for 90 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And was that consistent through
Oh,
the
no,
3 years?
look, it wasn't, because sometimes, sometimes there'd be holidays and sort of things like that, where, you know, so we didn't always do, we'd always take like Christmas off, or, you know, sort of if I was on holidays or Irene was on holidays, and, you know, stuff like that. So to be anywhere sort of between 2 to 3 weeks. So, yeah.
And Alshara wanted to say that she's sorry for upsetting you.
Oh, no. I'm a crier. Don't worry. I cry at, like, puppy commercials.
We all do that.
Tears are fine. You've got to get used to tears if you're going to be a counsellor.
That's true.
Yeah.
May I also ask, it sounds like this was a wonderful counsellor that you worked with.
Yeah.
But I always like to ask, was there something that you didn't like about her at all, or anything that she did?
I didn't like it when she'd push me on issues. You know, if she'd call me on things, and sometimes she was a bit pedantic, you know, about, you know, driving a point forward, and I'd go, okay. So, you know, sometimes that I maybe wasn't ready for that, or yeah, sometimes I just wasn't ready for it, and maybe that used to annoy me a bit. Yeah.
Because Ashna also asked whether it's, well, she asked Sophie and me really, whether it's okay ever to say to a client, "Oh, you're wrong."
Yeah. Oh, and forgive me.
And it's a good
Forgive me.
point.
My words are probably. I don't think she actually ever used the words "you're wrong."
Okay.
I just can't think of the exact words, but I can remember a few times sort of giving her my opinion,
Yeah.
and she would call me on that. And to be honest, I can't remember and that's just my wording. I don't think she ever said you're wrong.
And I think that's why I wanted to clarify that a little bit with you, because in my view I would never use that term.
No,
I'd never state that sort of opinion
my
with
memory's
a client.
not great.
No,
I can't remember exactly sort of how she posed it, but I just remember that she would call me and say, perhaps, you know, have you thought about this, that, you know, maybe this is how it is.
And I think that's more appropriate when we're talking about challenging clients, being black and white and giving our sense of opinion as the therapist isn't appropriate.
Yeah,
in that regard,
and
in
forgive
my
me
opinion.
if I've misled you to say she said you're
Nothing
wrong.
to
But
forgive.
I don't think she ever said, you know, you're wrong. But she would call me on me sort of skirting around issues and things.
Tristan, what are your thoughts on that? It's very eloquent.
See, I already responded in the forum and I
okay.
said it depends on the relationship, I think. If you've got a really good relationship, I think, and you've got that kind of relationship, then maybe it's okay.
And I think if I think of the specific example that I sort of had given, it was about a woman at work I was having difficulties with, and the perspective is that she wanted to give me the perspective from her side, because I was like, I'm right about this situation. I'm, you know, she's the one in the wrong. And she's like, well, maybe you're not quite right about that. And sort of...
So it sounds like the intention to me was that she was trying to get you to have a sense of maybe what the other side was in regards to the other person.
And how she was reacting to things. And
which
helped me understand that we're not all the same people, and we all don't work the same, and you know, that we're not all the same personality type either, you know, and you know, this person may not have the ability to, you know, if they're, I'm just trying to think now, it was like, you know, she was being very blunt, and And it's like, well, maybe she doesn't have the emotional capacity to say it in any other way. And that, you know, do you really think that she meant you harm by that? And I'm like, probably not. So that's sort of more where...
Yeah.
Because like I said before, I'm a little bit stubborn and I'm a bit opinionated, and I like to think that I know everything, and I don't. So in those situations, she's sort of, what do you think about that? You know,
Oh, yeah.
and particularly that sort of came up with sort of my dad. You know, sort of the relationship that I had with my dad. My dad was a very stern, never showed love, never said he loved me, never, you know, and I sort of took that as, oh, he didn't love me, you know, he didn't care, and he didn't care about us. But when we explored it, it's like his own mother had deserted him at 13 years of age. He raised himself from 14. He worked in the Depression, through the war. He rented a house, he got a job. He didn't know how to show love because he'd never been shown it. And as soon as she said that, I went, oh, okay, I get it now. I had never looked from his perspective. Yeah.
It's a beautiful example, Diane. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, that was quite powerful, and it helped me forgive him, which was good.
Yeah. Any other questions, Tristan?
No, those are all the questions actually.
And I think we're coming to the end.
Yeah.
Anything just to finish off, Diane, that you would like to share, or that you feel like you haven't covered that you'd like to?
No, just good luck, everyone, and be great counsellors. Go forth and conquer.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being a part of this process and being so open with us, and sharing your perspective so deeply, and clearly thinking about it so much by bringing notes. That's very impressive, I must say.
I've actually got more notes there, but, you know, yeah.
So thank you for your generosity
you're welcome.
in sharing your story
really
with us
hope
this
it's
evening.
Of benefit, and people find it helpful.
I'm
Absolutely.
certain
Yeah,
that they
the
will.
students are very enthusiastic and very grateful. They're all saying thank you, and it's been wonderful.
Yes, seeing lots of thank yous on the screen.
Thank you.
There. So thank you, Tristan, for assisting with the technology and the question forum tonight. Thanks, everybody, for those of you that have managed to see this live, and of course for students that will watch it later on in the week. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week. We're going to be looking at development. So there'll be some interesting topics there. This is the last of our live interviews. So next week it will be a live lecture instead, and you'll have my dulcet tones again. So have a lovely week, everybody. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.